Welcome to Triumphant Thursdays on Tea Time with Afternoon Social. Every Thursday, we talk to ladies who share their stories of achieving amazing things, big and small. They have overcome challenges, defied the odds, and made their dreams come true. Grab your favorite cup of brew and join us as we lift each other up and inspire each other to reach for the stars.
I am, yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to Tea Time with Afternoon Social. I'm Teresa Lauterbach, your host, and we want to welcome Saloni Surah. She is joining us from England today. She holds a doctorate on HIV and drug use, and Dr. Surah is also an HIV and sexual health consultant. And Saloni is a published author as well. Her first book is Flora Investigates, the case of the missing gold eggs. And additionally, she has an active interest in meditation, self-development, and other healing modalities, and works as a spiritual coach. So, hi, Saloni, how are you today?
Hello, I'm good. It's so lovely to be with you today.
Here on Triumphant Thursdays, the title of today's episode is Beyond Bullying and Stress. And Saloni is going to share with us her story of how she overcame adversity onto becoming a doctor and an author. So, Saloni, I'm going to turn it over to you to give us a backstory of all of this adversity to success that you've had.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was actually working as a doctor at the time. I was a senior doctor, and I returned part-time and ended up in a very unpleasant bullying situation. It got quite bad and it kind of culminated in a bit of stalking online and personally and anonymous letters. So I have no idea who did it, the stalking bit. But I didn't realise at the time that I had PTSD from it. And I know it sounds crazy because I'm a doctor, but my perception was it was people, army people, veterans who'd gone to war and come back with that. It took me quite a long time to get diagnosed, tested. I'd seen numerous doctors because I'd had to go off sick from my workplace. And, it was only after my first child was born. I had an unpleasant birth. I'd moved country when I was heavily pregnant because I didn't feel safe. So in hindsight, it was a big, screaming sign of PTSD or trauma. And after my first child was born, I became very unwell. It was quite a traumatic birth. I was really in no position to negotiate as well, moving that late. And yes, I became very unwell, lost a lot of weight, and just didn't want to be around. So eventually I got the help I needed, which is EMDR therapy. And it transformed my life. Now, up until that point, I'd been doing a lot. As you say, I'm a spiritual coach. I'd been doing tapping, been going to yoga, kind of gentle yoga, Pilates, healing sessions, acupuncture, reflexology. I'd tried it all, but I was still running around with fight or flight. So it was the EMDR therapy for me that really transformed that. And once I started to get that, my weight started to go on, I started to feel better. I was able to talk about it without crying. I remember when I was pregnant and going to one of the psychiatrists in the maternity hospital going, I don't want to feel like this. I knew that I wanted to transform it, but I didn't want to feel this, that I wanted to move on. I said, please send me to a psychologist. I didn't know that I had PTSD, but I knew that the counselling and everything that I was doing wasn't working, wasn't enough. And that, I didn't want to be on antidepressants for the rest of my life. For me, it's about dealing with the cause and not just masking it. Certainly as a doctor, I'm much more holistic than that. So, and they just said, we don't want people to return to that kind of workplace. Now, I just wonder if had they sent me on or, screened me, because there were multiple people that saw me, how different things could have been. But regardless of that, I'm here and now. I'm better. I can talk to you about it. I'm open about it, which is a wonderful thing. And, also that treatment transformed my life. It really was. It gave me my life back. And after having that, I started to put weight on, made plans for the future, moved forward. And here I am 13 years later, having published my first book. So it's really wonderful. I'm working on my second's being illustrated right now and edited, and then I'll be picking up my third soon. So these are books that I've had 10, 12 years, that have been sitting there.
Right. Well, and that sounds like getting the help you need was one of the biggest hurdles you had, wasn't it?
It absolutely was, it was, so I suppose for me, I was reflecting on this today, if just somebody had screened me or mentioned PTSD, because nobody had mentioned it. Obviously, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a HIV sexual health doctor. So have somebody screened it, mentioned it, even if there hadn't have been free treatment, then I would have had a choice as to whether or not to go for that treatment. When I moved back and was pregnant, I was referred to mental health here. They had said counselling, but then they turned around and said, because I was so heavily pregnant, they wouldn't see me. But again, I think that would have transformed things, because I wanted it. I understand for a lot of people they didn't, but I wanted to feel better. I wanted to transform it. I wanted to be the best mother I could be. I wanted to move on with my life. And I have done that, and it has transformed it for me. I've continued to do my own work. So the fact that I'm here talking to you today is a big thing, because I went off social media with the stalking, and I just couldn't be on it. It was scary. It just wasn't possible for me then.
Yeah, and people don't understand how that really affects them, where the cause really is coming from.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when the anonymous letters had been sent, people were suggesting that I sent them, and I was like, really? I've got better things to do. But I had gone to an occupational health appointment. I can laugh about it now.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether it was friends. I didn't know whether, it was colleagues. I didn't know whether somebody had been paid to follow me. So I remember leaving that appointment, and it was in my old workplace. So that in itself, going to that was quite traumatic for me, because being in that environment was traumatic, and would induce kind of fight or flight. And walking home a different way. So if somebody was following me, they wouldn't know where I lived, although clearly they did because of what was in the letters, and pretending to walk into a shop, but actually hiding behind the crisp machine or chip machine next to the shop, and then waiting for a bit and walking home another way. That's how bad it was, at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we tell people to face our fears, but when it's a fear that there's somebody there, that's hard to even acknowledge. It's harder to even address, because you don't know if it's real or not, if somebody's following you, and that would be a fear that, like you said, it would turn into PTSD because of all that.
Yes. It wasn't just that. There were other things that had caused the PTSD, and the kind of no need to go into it, but it was all related to the bullying. And yes, it was crippling. There was a part of me that was continuing fight or flight, part of my brain that was continually there. And ultimately, the reason I moved was I didn't feel safe, and I didn't want to be walking around with a newborn there. Like, I had gone to the police and nobody had taken it seriously. I didn't feel safe. At the worst, I was eating a banana a day, sleeping 2-3 hours a day, broken sleep, having profuse diarrhea, and I was crying in my clinic, in my office. So that was bad, and chest pain. And I just didn't realise, because when you're in the midst of it, even if you're a health professional, you don't know. You're just like, I feel dreadful. What is this? It's the fear.
Right. And like I said, it's a more difficult fear, because it's not something like afraid of heights or something, because it's not something you can control.
Absolutely. And one of the things that now that I'm over it, one of the things I find the hardest is that many people who are health professionals will tell me to just get on with it, that I was imagining it, who didn't screen me, who could have averted, I could have had an entire different birth. My child could have had a mother that was present for the first 6 months of their life. I could have ended up without an instrumental delivery and a tear. It could have been so different. And I think that's the shame, that we don't realise, I think there's so many people walking around with PTSD who don't know. I think it's not diagnosed enough, which is a shame. And, our perception is it's all veterans. And, it's not. There's women who have traumatic births, who lose children, miscarriages, and end up with PTSD. There's people like me. There's plenty of other stuff. Children who've lost parents at a young age.
Right.
And the reason I'm saying this is because there is a treatment. I was offered CBT and the EMDR. The EMDR worked beautifully for me, and it also worked for me. So I had birth trauma too from that birth, and it worked beautifully for me for that again. And I was heavily pregnant by the time I got it, because there was only one person on the mental health team of pregnancy one that was doing it, and I'd gone before getting pregnant, but I had to wait for this individual. They kept trying to give me ECBT, and I said, no, I need the EMDR. It works. It worked. And that, I can tell you that when I was early pregnant, my second pregnancy, I would wake up in the middle of the night having nightmares of giving birth, of just how I was going to do it. And I had an entire, it was entirely different. I didn't have the home birth that I wanted, but it was a planned section. It was pleasurable. It was joyful. I was present. The baby was well. It was entirely different. And that was the power of that EMDR therapy.
For those out there in our audience, explain a little bit what EMDR stands for and what kind of therapy that is.
So it's a rapid eye movement desensitization therapy. It's a bit like tapping. So you kind of, it's following eye movements. Or the first time I did a bit of tapping, and they don't know exactly how it works, but it kind of reorganizes your brain and the experience. And you can also do it for forward planning. So I'm not an expert, so apologies if that's not an amazing, it's probably not a very clear description, but it's an eye movement therapy that's done with a trained psychologist. They have to be trained in EMDR. And yeah, so I spent a lot of time talking over the situations that have caused the trauma and reprocessing it. But, either one of my therapists had used the finger, so you'd follow the finger, and then the other one, it was like butterfly tapping here as I was doing it. So a bit like tapping, but it just transformed it. Like, I can talk to you today. If it had been 3-4 years ago, I would be sobbing, a mess, all over the place, not coherent. The fact that I can talk to you and I'm talking to you and I've published a book and been visible is a miracle in itself.
Yeah, and that's fantastic that you're able to go on and get off into another world and become an author, and be able to express your imagination and those innate passions that we don't know we have. And like you said, you get those fears in the way. We aren't following that path, so we can't see it.
Absolutely. As for me, my medical career had taken up so much of my life that it was only ironically when I was doing my doctorate that I managed to manage my time and make space for some of the creative things. And that's when I started to write. And that was 2010. And it sounds crazy because I was doing a PhD, but it gave me the time to do that and the space. And that was my decision also after going back as a consultant, that I wanted to be part-time because I wanted more of a creative life, that I wanted to do the coaching, the writing. It actually made me a better doctor. And I wanted, at that point I was still single, so I wanted to meet somebody and have a family too. And I knew that if I kept working those hours, that it wasn't going to happen.
And you hit a key point that when you're working in your passions and things, how much better everything else is in your life, because you're balanced and you're
yes, absolutely. I'm certainly a much better doctor. I mean, it was probably in a way a bad thing, because it was probably the reason that I'd managed to put up with the PTSD for 2-3 years and function, because I wasn't going in every day and because I was doing creative endeavors. So I was, writing, coaching, and having time to myself. So probably had I been full-time continuously for that time period, I would have probably crashed and burned like I did at a much sooner date. So, a blessing and a curse, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to leave our audience with today?
No, just that there's hope. I think so. It's like with my books, I want people to know that there is a hope, there is another way, that, I did it, they can do it. Sometimes it might mean fighting for that help, but you deserve it. You are worth it. And, it can give you freedom. And, I think that's powerful. I want people to know that it's not, we perceive it's just the veterans. It's not. There's lots of other people that have it. And, it didn't require a doctor for the treatment. It was a psychologist, and it was transformative for me. And it's allowed me to go on and function. To thrive, I hope. I've in the last few years moved country, bought a house, had 2 children, published one, I'm doing another, picking up my other bit. So, it's allowed me to thrive in a way. So there is hope, and, fight for the help that you need, and, fight for yourself, really. You deserve it.
Well, thank you so much, and we've had a great conversation today. We're going to she's going to join us again tomorrow for Friends Day Fridays, where she's going to chat about some of her hobbies and interests and how they've brought her joy and brought her out of some of that darkness. And so we will see you again tomorrow on Friends Day Fridays. So thank you again for joining me today, Saloni, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Look forward to tomorrow.